Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on the chassis for my 69 Harbor Blue Highboy project. We're going to drag it out of the shop and steam clean it and get a list together and see what all we need. So let's go dig into it. Hey guys, thanks for watching this project here. We're going to do a body swap on it with a mint 69 F250 I picked up a while back. This 69 Highboy chassis is the donor with the VIN and the title and everything. So we're going to use this chassis and use that body. But right now I need to get it out of the shop and get it cleaned up. The last episode we pulled the cab and everything off of this truck. If you missed that, go back and check that out. But right now we're going to drag this frame out of here and get the steam cleaner out and go to town on it. So let's see if we can get her cleaned up and get an idea of what we need for it. Well guys, I had a nice time lapse going of the me steam cleaning this frame, but the camera fell over. It's a little breezy here today, blew the camera over, but that's all right. We'll just roll with it. Cleaned the frame off, it went pretty well. Here's a steering gear cleaned off. Unfortunately, the steam cleaner was blowing off some of that paint off of it, but it's still cleaned up nice. I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. It's actually really tight, but kind of hate to leave the old 50-year-old steering gear on there without putting a rebuilt one on there. But we'll see what kind of shapes that in, see what we got going on there. Cleaned off the 90-degree oil filter adapter there, because we'll need that. And the Highboy oil pan, tried cleaning it off as good as I could, but it's kind of hard to get underneath it. So transmission cleaned up pretty nice, although I'm not planning on using this one. Still wanted to clean it off so it's all clean and ready to go if I do need to use it. Right here you can see some of the part number left on there, like CN, that's 9N9Y. I'm not exactly sure what those numbers correlate to, but you know, that I see that a lot of times on these old new process transmissions. Right there's the new process logo. The shifter, got this all cleaned up. Of course, we're gonna have to take this tail housing off and put it on our other transmission. So I got that all cleaned off. The transfer case, got it as cleaned off as I could. This tag here is in pretty decent shape. A lot of times those tags are pretty beat up, you can't even read them. That one's pretty nice. It could be a little bit better, but I'll take it. Got the cab mount, the bushings for the cab mounts taken off. Is nice. I was happy to see that they are not rotten out, so that's good to see. The last one I did, these were all rotten out and I had to replace them. That one and the front one up here, that's pretty good shape. Overall, everything is looking pretty good. Here's the other side of the transmission all cleaned up. There's the tag for the transmission on the PTO cover. But for now, I think I'm going to get this engine and transmission pulled, and then start stripping stuff off of this frame while I have it out here, like the exhaust and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll get it in the shop and then start doing stuff like brake lines and all of that extra stuff. But right now, we're going to get on pulling this engine. Well guys, I got the engine and transmission pulled out of here. It came off pretty easy. Now I got it in the shop here. It's time to strip down all the little bits and pieces on this frame, like shock absorbers, all the parking brake cables, the brake system, you know, all of that stuff. Get this thing stripped all the way down to the bare frame. And I also want to inspect the axles and see what the axles look like as far as needing rebuilt, you know, just needing a service, or you know, the brakes. I'm sure we need to completely go through the brakes and like the wiper seals in front up here for sure. But I'm more concerned about the bearings and the center sections and stuff like that. You know, if it's set with a bunch of water in it and everything's rusty, then it's going to have to completely be blown apart. So going to inspect that kind of stuff. And we're just going to get after stripping this frame down. And I have a few things to clean up on it. Just might as well show you that. Right back here we had that bumper was welded on the frame there. I got it cut pretty darn close to the frame, so there's a little bit of grinding there to do. Over here I couldn't get the grinder in there very good, so I didn't want to cut the weld. I just cut the plate. So now that the bed's off, I can get in here and grind on this that weld there, so I can get that little piece knocked off of here. And on the end of the frame, I want to make a nice straight line and cut this frame off nice and square and get rid of that. I think it was actually welded on some extension or something. This is a weld right here. So I'm going to cut that off. Just noticed right here, there's some mark on this spring hanger from this bolt here working back and forth. I hope this the spring hanger's all right. Sometimes those holes in there get wallered out and kind of messed up if these shackles are, if the bushing in here is blown out and it's working and twisting back and forth and stuff. But we'll inspect all of that when we get it all stripped down. But for now, I think all of this stuff is junk, like the brake lines and stuff, and even the wiring harness. It is pretty bad. See all that? He broke wire right there. So not to be too concerned with saving all this. I'll transfer the wiring harness and everything from that two-wheel drive onto this frame. So I'll that nice wiring harness in that truck, we'll use that one. I'll try to keep it intact as when I can, and all the clips and stuff, I want to keep all the clips, like these clips right here. I want to be real careful with those to try to retain those, because I have not been able to find replacements of those. But anyway, I'm going to get after that, and we'll see what we can find. Hey guys, jumping in here because I wanted to show you something before I get it completely disassembled. But so far it's going pretty good. I have the all the shock mounts and the engine perches off, all the brake hardware and everything forward of the transfer case. I still have everything in the back to do yet. The drag link is fighting me a little bit, but that's to be expected as long as that thing's been together. These tapered, you know, this hole's tapered like a tie rod. So I got some penetrating oil in there soaking, let it get in there a little bit. And didn't want to use a pickle fork because it's just going to ruin that boot. If have some old work truck or something we want to throw that on, this drag link is still in pretty good shape, and these things are pretty hard to come by and pretty expensive when you do find them. So one that's in good shape, I wanted to keep those boots intact, so I'm going to see if I can get those things popped out without tearing those boots up. So I'm going to give that time a little bit to soak up, and I don't want to pull the steering box off until I get that off, because if I take that pitman arm off, it's going to be hard to separate all that stuff. But anyway, wanted to show you this right here. See right now the transfer case is in two-wheel drive, obviously, and the front axle is unlocked. So, you know, this drive shaft spins freely. I already have this hub over here locked. And, you know, these are the factory hubs that would have came on these trucks. And you don't see these on trucks very often because normally they fail and the internals in here break. I'm not sure exactly what breaks, but these are not very common at all to have on a truck still after, you know, all these years of working and pulling hard. Usually these things break and they replace them with some aftermarket unit. But I wanted to show you right there, that should be locked. And right now the front axle is locked. So the hubs actually work on this truck. And over here, like I was saying, this truck would have had those hubs on this axle as well, but they've been changed out with an aftermarket unit. And I got these new old stock Warren Lock-O-Matic hubs that are pretty darn neat in my opinion. They're new old stock and they fit this axle here. And I was thinking, you know, this restored Highboy would look awful nice with these hubs on it. You know, because they're just so nice and so blingy. I actually got these for that truck over there, which I'm going to use them for sure on that truck, but I have another set located. The only problem is they're very, very expensive. And another thing is I have these originals here that are working, but they're pretty beat up. They're not very clean, not in very good shape. I guess I might try to clean these up and see how they clean up and go from there. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Should I use these new old stock Warrens or try to save the originals? So let me know in the comments below. But I'm going to continue stripping this frame down and see if we can get this thing taken care of today. Well guys, I almost have everything stripped off this frame. Still a few things I'm lacking. Transfer case, I'm going to do that outside where I can get a pallet up under here, and then I can just buzz those bolts off and let the transfer case drop on that pallet versus trying to manhandle it on a jack or anything otherwise. So I'll do that outside. Same thing with the axles. I'll leave this a rolling chassis. I'm going to roll it outside and steam clean it a lot better because there's spots where I couldn't get to, like right here, and especially up here where the engine was. I'm going to steam clean all this a lot better before I yank the axles off and stuff. I might even try to sandblast some of it and see how that's going to go. See if I'm undecided anyway, if I'm going to try to sandblast it or if I'm going to take it up to the professionals and let them do it. I'm probably going to do some testing here on this stuff where it's a little bit more scaly and see how kind of a metal finish I can get on it. I have this stuff here that's called coal slag. That's what I can get locally. I can also get some other stuff if I need to, but that stuff's cheap and it's supposed to be pretty aggressive. So I'll try to clean this up as best I can. If not, I'll take it up to the professionals and let them do it. And up here I still have to do I have to cut this weld right here because this is the bracket for the front bumper, because this truck had a bumper on it like one of these bumpers right here, like a factory bumper, and these are the brackets for the Highboys that have the bumper on them. And this one was welded on. These things have a captured nut up back in here, and a lot of times those things get stripped out or something's wrong with them, so I imagine that's what happened there. That nut got stripped out and they just put some weld there to hold the bumper on. Same thing over here, a couple inches of weld. This one might even be cross-threaded right here because it's sticking out a little bit. So still have to cut that stuff off, and a little bit of work on the back of the frame I haven't done yet. But one thing I thought was interesting when I was taking this thing apart, that's why I have this still on here, was this truck was built in San Jose, California. And when I was taking the shock tower off, I noticed it has its own bolts. You see how there's 6 bolts here? These 4 bolts are for the engine pedestal, which I have off of here, which is this right here. And these 2 bolts are for the shock tower. And the trucks I'm familiar with, the shock tower is bolted on with these 2 bolts, and it's over here to the right. There's only 4 bolts here, you know, these sets of holes, these other sets of holes are for a 6-cylinder. You move the engine pedestal forward for the straight 6 because it has a different shock location. And I've just always known that these move with the of course, I don't really know 6 cylinders here. I don't have any to look at. Anyway, what I'm getting at is this truck was built in San Jose, and it's different. It has its own bolts. And the trucks I'm familiar with are like this one over here, where the shock tower is bolted on with the pedestal bolts, and there's only 4 bolts. And I went out and looked at all the trucks I have. I have another San Jose truck, the one from Utah, the 72, and it is built like this. And I have 2 other Kansas City trucks, and they're all built like that. So I just thought that was interesting. Thought I'd share it. I think that makes me a nerd if I nerd out on that kind of stuff, trying to figure all that stuff out. I don't know if that is unique to the trucks I have, or if that's the way they built them different in San Jose. If you have a Highboy, comment down below and let me know where your shock pedestal is, if it has its own bolts or if it's bolted on with the engine pedestal bolts, and the build plant. The build plant is the 5th digit in the VIN number. I love that kind of stuff, love that data, and love hearing from you guys about your trucks. But anyway, I'm gonna get this thing yanked out of the shop and clean it up a little bit better, and maybe strip the axles down. Well guys, before I take this thing out of the shop and do the final disassembly on it, I thought I would go over kind of everything, my first impressions of the frame, what I think needs to be replaced and what I think doesn't, and kind of show you that procedure and how I went about everything. First off, I want to start it up here at the front. The front axle is the most important part. There's the most wear items and stuff in the front axle on this frame. So first thing I do is I rock the tire back and forth like so. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but rock it back and forth, and there's a tiny bit of play in this. It'd be more noticeable if you had it jacked up, but you can tell with it on the ground. And all the play is right here in between the drum and the backing plate for the brakes, and that would mean wheel bearing. It can also be in the kingpin here, the kingpin assembly. There's bearings in here. It can be in that, but all the play here is in the wheel bearing, which is pretty normal. You know, wheel bearing wear. It's more than you would set a new bearing to, but just an old used bearing. It's about standard. Same thing on the other side. I already checked that. So that would mean our wheel bearings, I'm probably going to replace them just because they show some wear, and we're doing all this work to this truck. It'd be a shame to put in 50-year-old bearings, however old they are. Moving on from the front axle, obviously brake lines, and the hard line on these HD axles comes from the wheel cylinder up to this plate where the hose hooks to. I'm going to replace that line as well because it's all rusty and crusty and pitting on it and everything. So I'm going to put new lines there. Obviously going to rebuild the brakes because this truck has been sitting for an awful long time, and everything's kind of tight and dragging and stuff. So I'm just going to replace everything, hardware kit, drum liners, wheel cylinders, everything I can in the brake assembly. And obviously the wiper kit is completely shot. It's all missing right there. So it's going to need new wiper seals, but that's pretty much every old closed knuckle axle on these old trucks. Moving on to the center section here, the pinion seal is leaking, so at least going to have to replace that, but it could be leaking because our vent is plugged up. See, this is the vent up here. A lot of times these hoses get broke off, or even if the hose is on it, the end of the hose is plugged up with mud and stuff, and this center section needs to breathe, and if it can't breathe, there's pressure that builds up in here, and usually it leaks out the pinion seal. That's pretty common on old work trucks and stuff that see mud and stuff. That vent is just a little bitty tiny hole in that nipple there, and that vent gets plugged up. But so it needs a new pinion seal at least. Now, I have a lot of people asking me about differentials and rebuilding axles and stuff, and that is a pretty complex topic, which I have done it before on the channel. But once again, I'm not really a how-to YouTube channel, so maybe one day I'll do a complete axle rebuild. But I wanted to show you on this one why I'm not rebuilding it, I think. If you look down here, the fluid on it is really nice and clean fluid. There's no water in it, so it hasn't been sitting with water in it, and the fluid is not glittery, so it doesn't have a bunch of metal shavings in it. It's actually really nice and good fluid, and it is at the correct level. It's right here below the plug. So, especially on this front end, this front axle where this center section isn't going to be spinning much at all, especially on this restored truck. How many times is it going to be put in four-wheel drive? Now, not saying that every axle wouldn't be rebuilt on something like this, because sometimes if this thing's set with water in it, these things could be completely shot and it wouldn't even run a mile. So just because it's a restoration doesn't mean I wouldn't be rebuilding the axle, but I think this one is in good shape. Of course, I'm going to change the fluid and reseal the diff cover and change out that pinion seal. But I think we're going to leave this front axle as is. Now the rear axle, going here further to the back, it is the same as far as the fluid is concerned. And the pinion seal, for that matter. The pinion seal is leaking. And here's the vent on these, and it looks to be plugged up as well, so that's probably why that pinion seal is leaking. I checked the fluid on this. It's in good shape, but it's low. So it's low on fluid. But another few things I don't like about this axle, the shock mounts are really beat up. This one has got a big washer welded on there. It's kind of beat up. And this one over here is really beat up. Looks like the shock was loose or something, and it just hammered it. And I couldn't even get that bolt out of that shock mount. So this axle, I think I'm not going to use it just for those reasons, just because it needs work. I'm going to use the stock axle on that two-wheel drive truck. It's a Dana 70, just like this one, and I think it actually has 14 gears. I'm going to have to double check, but if it has 14 gears, that would be perfect, because it's a low mile axle. It's going to be in perfect shape, and the gear ratio will match the front axle. So that's what we're planning on doing there. Over here, the leaf springs, I like to put new leaf springs on trucks just because these ones here are usually settled out, and a lot of times they are rusted in between the layers. This one actually looks in pretty good shape, but they can also be wore out, because whenever this flexes, these layers move back and forth, and they'll put a wear mark on these leaves, and if you use them a lot, they're liable to crack and break on you. So these old leaf springs, I like to replace them on these trucks pretty much anytime I do a rebuild on them, just because they're settled out. Actually, I can show you here if I can do it with one hand. About 11 and a half. Got this this frame over here that I'm redoing that's got new springs on it. It's about 12, so about a ½ inch of settle right there. Actually, that's less than I thought it would be, but anyway, when you get new leaf springs, you get new leaf spring bushings and everything, obviously. Now, if you're not doing like a full-blown restoration, you could just replace the bushings in here. If you're just rebuilding a truck to drive. These bushings right here also need to be replaced. I always replace these. They're kind of a pain. Any leaf spring bushing is a pain, but these here in the frame are especially a pain, because you have to do it in the frame. You can't, like a leaf spring, you can take it out and get to a press or something, but you can't on that one. I usually end up cutting them out with a hacksaw. Moving on to the back, same thing. Leaf spring bushings, if you're going to keep the leaf springs, or just do new leaf springs and new shackles and new bolts all around. So that's the initial impressions on the frame. Forgot about the transfer case here. On the transfer cases, I always check the bearing play right here. Now this one's really tight, probably because it's the front drive shaft and hasn't been used as much. The intermediate input, it's pretty good. Now this is the one that is usually loose, and it's actually in real good shape. So I don't think we're going to have to do a full rebuild on the transfer case. I'm obviously going to take it apart and inspect everything, but I think we're good there on the transfer case. Same thing goes for the drive shafts. I'm going to put new U-joints in all the drive shafts, but the splines do get wore out. And if the splines are wore out, you can cut this end off and put a new spline on it, or just get a new drive shaft made. I'll have to check these over and see how they are. But that's kind of my initial impressions on this frame and what all needs to be replaced, and kind of gives you guys a peek into my thought process when I go through a frame and stuff. So we're going to get this thing out of here, and we're going to steam clean it and see if we can get further with this project. Well, got the transfer case off. It fought me a little bit. These bolts were seized up in there pretty tight. One thing I noticed when I was taking it apart is it's got some extra holes here. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to do some measuring on some other frames why there's 4 holes on each side. It's almost like somebody drilled some new holes or something. I don't know. There is an extra plate on this one that was welded on. That is not original. I don't know what was going on there. Maybe there was some kind of PTO attachment, because these have a PTO box on the, or a plate on the side. You can put a PTO or something for a winch or something or other. Here's the wire ties for the front mounts. It's like the castle nut that keeps the nut from backing off. These top bushings are completely shot. These have been replaced because the originals were yellow. So someone's been in here before and replaced the bushings. On the bottom one right there, there's some yellow showing on that. So that's a factory one. I guess these could be factory and the yellow paint's just all gone. That's probably more likely. But I noticed there was a little bitty crack right there and a weld. Something might have got loose there. I'll have to do a little bit of repair work on. Otherwise, going pretty good. So right now I am going to get this frame out and steam clean it once again to try to get everything like up here where the engine was, where I didn't get it very clean. I'm going to steam clean everything again, yank these axles off, and right here on this spring perch it's messed up. It's actually been taken off before and it's all bolted on. So I was pretty happy to see that. I'll be able to unbolt this and get this spring hanger, the mount here, off and on the bench, and I'll be able to fix that, or maybe even replace it with a different one off a different frame that I'm not using. We will see what I end up doing there, but I have to do that. And then where that pipe bumper was, I have to cut these off right here, or not cut them off, grind them off, cut and clean that up. There's a little bit of welding right here I was going to clean up, and I need to clean up the back end of this frame. So I'll get to doing that. I'll just do that off camera. It's pretty boring stuff. So next time you see this frame, hopefully we will be sandblasting it and coating it. I'm not sure whether I'm going to have a company up here do it that does a really good job, or if I'm going to try to tackle it myself. But you'll see that on the next episode. So hit that subscribe button so you can see that. Like this video if you like this project. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.